collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up this week, the UN Secretary-General's Special Advisor on Cyprus speaks frankly on United Nations Day.
There's no purpose in seeking a solution to which you can get a yes on your own side if you're not assisting the other leader to create the conditions for a yes on the other side.
The European Union's High Representative on the continuing violence in Israel and Palestine.
We must not lose sight of the underlying causes of tensions, the frustrations, the sense of insecurity, the lack of hope, the lack of political horizon.
It's the 15th anniversary of UN Resolution 1325.
It was a recognition for the first time that women experience war in a different way.
And we'll talk to the founder of the European Association of Judges for Mediation.
Mediation is a new mentality, so the judge must impulse the mediation.
The UN in Cyprus celebrated United Nations Day last week. At a reception at the Lydra Palace Hotel in the buffer zone of Nicosia, the Secretary-General's Special Representative in Cyprus, Espen, Barth, Eide, spoke frankly to the gathering.
We are now in the middle of a very, very interesting and a very, in my view, optimistic time. Cyprus is already with the promise of a possible solution, and we still have to say a possible solution, becoming a beacon of hope not only to many people in Cyprus and its immediate vicinity, but to the larger region and to the world. Because we are indeed living in a world of fragmentation, lack of trust, decoupling. We see it in the near neighborhood, we see it in the broader region, but Cyprus is different. Because the leaders of Cyprus are seriously seeking to bridge age-old differences. It's not an easy job, and I have the pleasure and burden of following very closely how this is developing. And I'm happy to use this opportunity today to say that what I am seeing at the table that I'm chairing, both the table where Mr. Akinci meets with Mr. Anastasiadis, but also the tables even more frequently where Mr. Nami is meeting with Andreas Mavroyiannis and their excellent teams. A development of away from an idea of a zero-sum game, we win, you lose, and into a partnership which is aiming at finding joint solutions that all Cypriots can support. Technically speaking, at least the majority of Cypriots of both sides, but hopefully eventually all Cypriots. And both leaders know that there's no purpose in seeking a solution to which you can get a yes on your own side if you're not assisting the other leader to create the conditions for a yes on the other side. So Mustafa, my friend, Mustafa Akinci, I know from our conversations that you are perfectly aware that you need to help Mr. Anastasiadis to get the yes in the Greek Cypriot community. And I'm equally convinced from my many conversations with Mr. Anastasiadis that he also knows that he, of course, needs to secure a yes in the Greek Cypriot community, but he also needs to help Mustafa Akinci to assure a yes in the Turkish Cypriot community. And in this spirit, the teams, led by the excellent negotiators that you have nominated to lead these talks, are building a partnership which I would describe as a sense of being a team, not two teams. They are two teams, and I have to say they are loyally representing different starting points, as they should. That's the purpose of negotiations. The purpose of negotiations is not to say, hey, let's just agree and go out and have a dinner and everything is over. It's a serious negotiation with different starting points, but they are increasingly appearing as one team who are chosen by history to solve an age-old problem, and I think they can. It's in the making, it is possible, it's within reach. We need to say, I want to be very honest, we all need to say, as the leaders have said repeatedly over the last weeks, there's still a long way to go. There are many hurdles yet to be overcome. There are many questions to be solved. There are many areas in which we have to balance a very important, understandable view presented by one side with an equally important and understandable perspective and view presented by the other side. But the trust, the will, and the leadership to do so is present. So what I call on all of the rest of you to help inspire and help support the leaders in this great effort. Over the last weeks, we've had a particular focus on the issue which I think is one of the most complicated ones for a Cyprus solution, the issue of property. And this is not a seminar about property, and I will not use this opportunity to say much about what's coming out of that. What I can tell you is that there is a serious recognition of both sides of where the other side come from and why their views are as they are. And in that I see significant hope. I also want to say, since this is UN Day, that we have the blessing of a unified Security Council. 15 out of 15 members of the United Nations Security Council, the highest body on the planet when it comes to peace and security issues, supports this effort. And this is not something Lisa and I believe, this is something we know, because we go to them quite frequently and tell them what's going on, try to give a report as good as we can, and every single member of the Council repeatedly underlines that they are behind this effort. This, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, this is unique. I can assure you that many of our colleagues, be they force commanders or SRSGs or special envoys or special advisors around the world, envy us a situation where we have a united Security Council behind us. But much more importantly, this is not about us, this is about Cyprus. Cyprus has the world's support, and the world is looking to Cyprus for inspiration and hope, and this is particularly important today on UN Day. Right now, I'm chairing negotiations led by the leaders, supported by their negotiators and teams, and I hope that this will lead to an agreement between the leaders, a settlement deal in the near future, without in any way specifying what the near future is, because that always brings me into trouble if I try. I think it will. But at the end of the day, it's not the leaders, it's the Cypriots. Every single citizen here in this island will have a say. A vote, they have one vote each. I don't have a vote, Christian doesn't have a vote, Lisa doesn't have a vote, the Cypriots have a vote. So it's about the whole community. And I think it's very, very important that we remember that the real decision will be taken when we actually, when a potential deal is presented to the people. Let me conclude by thanking my close colleagues, my own team in the Good Officers Mission, who's doing an excellent job all the time, when I'm here and when I'm elsewhere on the planet. And also my great friends and colleagues, Lisa Butenheim and Kristin Lund. And I would like to thank, through them, all the men and women in uniform, be it a military uniform or a police uniform, and all the civilian staff of NPCIP for a really good cooperation. We are not what the UN refers to as an integrated mission. But there is no more integrated mission than this one. So please don't declare it an integrated mission, because it works as an integrated mission as it is, and our cooperation is excellent. And as we also, as Lisa referred to 1325, I will reveal to you the real reason that I am here. It is that the Secretary General found out that there was time for some gender balance in the leadership. So I was brought in as the token man to help these women to lead the UN here. Thank you for your attention. Happy UN Day.
The UN Secretary-General's Special Advisor on Cyprus, Espen Barth Eide, talking at last week's reception for United Nations Day.
Listen online to the Cyprus News Digest on YouTube or at cyprusmail.libsyn.com. The latest program is uploaded every Friday, and if you missed one, you can catch up there.
On Tuesday, Federica Moraesini, the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, addressed the European Parliament about the situation in Israel and Palestine. Here are some extracts from her statement.
It is now mostly up to the political leaders on the two sides to get out of the current impasse and to show leadership. Both leaderships have a responsibility to promote calm, to contain the situation of violence and to promote calm. They have an interest in doing this for their own people. And they have a general responsibility towards the region, and I would say towards the rest of the world, to make sure that the situation doesn't inflame on the religious level and get spread all across the globe. We must not lose sight of the underlying causes of tensions, the frustrations, the sense of insecurity, the lack of hope, the lack of political horizon. De-escalating the security aspect, violence, implementing concrete steps on the ground in line with prior agreements, and creating the conditions for the political horizon. These are three elements we need to work in parallel on with the support of the international community. I also welcome and support Secretary Kerry's initiative to address the situation in the holy sites, highlighting the role of Jordan in this, which is key. In the next few weeks, the Quartet envoys will engage directly with the parties. It is now up to the Israeli and the Palestinian leadership to demonstrate with acts that their commitment to the two-state solution is real and not just fake, not just a slogan. And the mix of old and new, of history and religious elements in this moment in the region would be explosive. Only in a renewed regional framework, peace is possible. Arab partners have stressed to me their readiness to work with the Quartet in the coming months. We actually have started already to work together with them. But like us, they need to see determined leadership by the parties. We can build all the international and regional support, but they have to take responsibility for showing leadership inside. This is not going to continue like this. Every cycle of violence is going to be worse than the previous one, and this will destroy the Middle East. So, now is decision time. Israeli and Palestinian leaders will have to take courageous choices, difficult ones, but this is the only path they have towards peace. They can either move forward or watch chaos prevail in their own societies.
The EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Federica Moraesini, addressing the European Parliament on Tuesday.
Get in touch with the Cyprus News Digest by emailing cyprusnewsdigest@gmail.com.
Also very much in the news this week, the ongoing saga of the 114 migrants who landed at Akrotiri on the British sovereign base last week. They were moved earlier this week to the Decalia sovereign base area at the other end of Cyprus. The UNHCR has been fairly vocal in saying that it is the UK that is responsible for these refugees and migrants. A memorandum of understanding was signed in 2003 between the Republic and the UK, and a little later this week, immigrant support group KISA entered the fray and denounced the United Kingdom for what it called the violation of the rights of the refugees. It went on with a statement to the press to say that the UK has legal responsibility and that the MOU signed between the two countries laid out the steps that should be followed from the beginning on the part of the British bases. The refugees are not staying in Richmond Village in the sovereign base in Decalia. That's where 66 Iraqi and Syrian Kurds who washed ashore in Akrotiri back in 1998 are still currently living in limbo.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
October 31st marks the 15th anniversary of the adoption by the United Nations Security Council of Resolution 1325. The Gender Advisory Team here in Cyprus, to mark the 15th anniversary, would like to discuss the issue and bring it to the fore once again. From the Gender Advisory Team, Magda Zinon joins us. Magda, what actually is the impact of Resolution 1325, because it is very important when it comes to including, let's face it, half the world's population in decision-making.
Well, 1325 is a resolution that is labelled Women, Peace and Security. It was a recognition for the first time that women experience war in a different way. And the experiences they have during the war need to be brought out in the peace building, in the peace negotiating. That's the difference. Women are usually the ones that are left at home during the conflict. They're usually the ones that are running away from the conflict. They're the ones that keep the family together when the men are on the front line. They're usually the ones that, when the family is falling apart, they keep the family together. They need to provide food, shelter, water. A lot of the time, they're the victims of rape. We've seen it over and over again in Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe. So the whole idea is to actually discuss what happened and make sure that what happened is addressed, healed, and there's no room for it to happen again.
How, though, can you make sure there's no room for it to happen again? We're talking here about including women in the peace building, which is what's happened to some degree in Cyprus, of course.
Well, what needs to happen is that you need to include them in the peace building so that we actually create a culture of peace. I know it's a long process. I know it's an ideal world to have a total culture of peace, but it's talking about the rape. It's actually making sure that when there is a rape, the staff that deals with it knows how to deal with it, that it's not considered a shame, that it's healed. It's got to do with women being trained to participate in the army so that when there is something happening, they as women can identify, and the women coming in or requiring help are more at ease talking to someone of their own gender. They also bring things like men tend to see the bigger picture when they're peace building. Women tend to see the everyday of peace building, and that's the big difference.
And that's the bit that, of course, means that it may last or it may not.
Exactly, because women, it's what I said before, women, when the war starts or whatever happens, the women need to keep the family together. They need to make sure, it's usually their kids and elderly parents. And they need to keep the family together. A lot of the time, they're running away. There's certainly no money. There's no food. There's no water. They need to find shelter. There's people getting hurt. So if you bring this factor in to the peace building or the peace negotiations, then at the end of the day, you might have something that's, firstly, it's more participatory. We've all contributed. I'm not left out. And as you said, we are half the population. We are not a minority group. We are a vulnerable group, but we're half the bloody population of the world. So we need to be included because it does affect us differently.
But how well has the resolution actually worked on the ground?
Well, it has worked in the sense that gender has been put on the agenda. I don't know how important it is yet, but we're getting a lot more talk. There's been a few global conferences on the use of rape as a weapon of war. We've had recently Angelina Jolie with William Hague, a big one in the UK. It is on the table and it is being talked about. We are getting there. We aren't as far as we should be, but we definitely have taken steps from where we were.
All right, but 15 years is a long time. One would sort of expect to have moved further forward faster.
Absolutely, but we're also, in essence, fighting gender equality worldwide. It's not just at the negotiating table.
What about the issue here in Cyprus? We do have women now on an advisory team. We do have women on some of the technical committees. What's their input been? Is it taken seriously?
All this, the input, I have no idea what it is because there's a block out of information of what is actually happening. So we don't know if there is an input. They are not taken as seriously as they should be taken, but the fact that they're there is making a difference, because what needs to happen first is that you need to see a difference in the picture you're looking at.
Well, I must say that at the UN reception to mark United Nations Day last week, Lisa Buttenheim certainly mentioned gender as part of the Secretary-General's speech that she passed on. And then Espen, Barth, Eide, who I think you would agree has been instrumental in pushing forward the gender issue in the Cyprus negotiations, actually stood up, and next to him were Lisa Buttenheim and Kristen Lund, and he made a joke towards the end about him now being the gender equality bit because he was outnumbered by the women. He made a joke of it, but it was actually very clever because it did draw attention to something that so many people just totally ignore.
Well, we are the only country globally that has a totally female head of mission that's female. We've got Lisa Buttenheim and Kristen Lund. It hasn't happened anywhere else. But talking about it and bringing it to thought does help, but has it changed the way our leaders look at it? Has it changed the way the culture looks at it? That's what I said. It's actually we have made inroads. Women are coming more forward. There is more discourse about gender, but I'm not sure how much of it is, because gender must not be marginalized. Gender is the first step of equality. It's not just gender, it's senior citizens, it's in terms of education, it's in terms of gender is the first step of equality. So we shouldn't be a team on our own. It should be something that's included in all the negotiations, because the negotiations to date have been only equality in terms of ethnicity. We've only looked at Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot. It's got to be taken at every level, because equality is a basic, fundamental principle of anything that's going to work. We all need to have equal access to everything and equal responsibility.
But how far would you say that, if you like, the Mediterranean mindset that we still have here means that perhaps a fairly large proportion of Cypriot women on both sides don't see this as something that they can change, or isn't that important?
It's called patriarchy because the mindset has been so conditioned to, because we have a lot of feminists in Cyprus until we talk about the Cyprus problem. And then it becomes an ethnic issue. So the challenge for a lot of us that are feminists or believe in equality is to actually help shift the mindset that equality belongs everywhere, regardless of whether you're in the Cyprus problem, in the economy, in education. It belongs everywhere.
Are we getting close to that? Because there is undoubtedly this...
We're getting better. We're better. I have to admit we're better. The fact that we have got the Secretary General's special advisor who is a feminist, and he admits so himself, it is getting better. But we are not there yet. Because we need to remember that equality is equality across the board. Gender is not a separate issue. It's part of the issue. That's what we need to remember.
And we are remembering it because October the 31st is, of course, the 15th anniversary of that landmark United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
Mediation Meets Judges in Cyprus was the title of a conference held in Nicosia earlier this week. And a pioneer in the institutionalization of judicial mediation in France is Béatrice Blochon-Brunner. She's also the founder of the European Association of Judges for Mediation, GEM Europe. Béatrice, first maybe for people who are not really aware, because we're not very used to this in Cyprus, you could just explain, when we say mediation, what we mean.
When we say mediation, we mean that a mediator will be appointed to try to speak with the two parties and to find an agreement a win-win agreement, not a judgment, but a win-win agreement.
And that's really the bottom line, isn't it? You have two parties who might go away both feeling happy with the outcome and the fact that it's probably cost them a lot less in both terms of time and money than going through the full judicial process would.
Yes, of course, mediation is less expensive, and you can find an agreement in a few hours or maybe 1 month, but a trial is a very long time.
You're a judge yourself. What is the role of judges and the judiciary in mediation in terms of either ordering or suggesting that parties who end up in court actually move next door to mediate before they come back to court?
The role of the judge is very important because mediation is a new mentality, you know. So the judge must impulse the mediation. And the judge must propose the mediation, and he must inform what is mediation, and then appoint the mediator. And after, he has to enforce the agreement.
So the training of the mediator is all important. Who does that sort of training, and what does it involve?
Yes, the training is very important. We are not a mediator because we have some psychological qualities. We must have a training. And there are some trainers, accredited trainers, and people who want to be mediator must be a professional and have a training.
But what is the most important quality of a mediator? Because usually it is lawyers or judges who are doing the mediating, but it's a very different role they're playing than the, let's say, adversarial courtroom method, isn't it?
Mediator must hear. He must hear the people, and both people, and be neutral. And after hearing the people, he must try to find the interests of each people. And what is important for one it is important for the other one. And after the interests are known, so we can find the agreement.
And the important thing is that very often in these cases, the interest of one is actually rather different from the interest of the other, so it's possible to reach a compromise.
Yes, the compromise is very possible because one interest is not opposite to the other one, and we can have complementary interests, so we can find an agreement.
What effect does this have on the judicial system in terms, I don't know what it's like in France, but certainly in Cyprus and many other countries, the waiting time simply to get to court in the first place is so long. So you have people living under a cloud, sometimes for years. How does mediation speed up the judicial process for those who still have to go through it?
You know, mediation is a new tool that the law gives to the judges. Up to now, to find a solution of a conflict, the judge had only law. Now he had law and mediation, two tools to have a better role in the solution on the conflict.
Well, that is Beatrice Bloron-Brenner, who is the founder of the European Association of Judges for Mediation, GEM Europe, and she was one of the keynote speakers at a conference earlier this week in Nicosia. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.